I have wanted to make a video on this subject for a while because mental illnesses are complex and intense subjects to discuss. I don't know why it is, but most of us have an interest in these sorts of things. Whether that's our fascination with mentally ill people we see on TV, like Norman Bates, to famous painters like Vincent van Gogh, or on studying and trying to figure out what causes someone's mind to justify committing a truly evil crime. We are simply intrigued by those types of things, and with 1 in 4 people experiencing some kind of mental health problem every year, it's something that we are all surrounded by in some way. But the fact of the matter is, we simply do not have answers to many questions surrounding a normal functioning brain. So how can we possibly figure out what is going on inside the mind of a person suffering any given mental illness? Well, the truth is, we can't. We can't wrap our heads around what causes someone to have 20+ personalities, or hear voices in a schizophrenic state. Here are 5 of some of the most complex, mysterious, misunderstood, yet surprisingly common mental illnesses. As always, sit back and enjoy. Bipolar. Bipolar disorder is a mental health problem that is thought to affect 1.1% of the worldwide population, meaning that at any one time, up to 51 million people worldwide are affected. The term bipolar refers to how your mood can change between 2 different states, either high or low, and it's a relatively new term that was previously known as manic depression. One patient described it as, when my mood is high, I feel far quicker, funnier, smarter and livelier than anyone. But when my mood is low, I take on the suffering of the whole world. However, for the sufferer, these feelings will not switch off, and they cannot usually do something to make them feel better. So they either find themselves in a constant state of alertness, their minds churning with ideas, meaning they cannot sleep and start getting more and more drained, which untreated can lead to a total breakdown, or in the opposite state of what has been described as nothing, no thoughts, emotions or energy, and a complete loss of interest in everything that was once enjoyable. So what causes this debilitating condition? While it's not entirely known, although it's thought that genetics do play a part, as about half the people with bipolar disorder have a family member with a mental health issue. As far as studies show, the condition is also biological, that occurs in a particular part of the brain, and it may lay dormant until a trigger activates it. This could be caused by a dysfunction of certain neurotransmitters or chemical messages to the brain, or may be triggered by circumstances such as psychological stress or environmental conditions, a relatively new theory sparked by the correlation between homeless people who suffer from the disorder. At the moment, there is no cure for bipolar, but it is highly treatable with antipsychotic medications and therapy, and it's thought that if more research was put in, a cure could be possible within 10 years. For now though, the condition can be managed successfully, and is a reminder of the complexity of the human brain. Schizophrenia. Schizophrenia has a huge amount of stigma surrounding it, and is easily one of the most widely known and talked about mental illnesses we know of. It's a severe mental disorder that causes a variety of psychological symptoms and affects the way a person thinks, causing an adverse effect on a person's ability to cope with everyday life. Surprisingly, it's probably a lot more common than you may think. It's believed to affect 1 in every 100 people worldwide, often developing at a young age, typically in teenagers and young adults. The early onset of schizophrenia can also coincide with adolescence and initially displays similar behaviours like sleep disruption, lack of motivation, and becoming socially withdrawn, along with the inability to think clearly. However, in schizophrenia, these symptoms are severe and can cause delusions and strange beliefs that are not based on reality, as well as hallucinations, paranoia, and the inability to distinguish between what is real and what is not. Some sufferers hear voices in their head. These can often be rude, critical, and abusive. They can also give instructions to the sufferer, telling them to do and think things that may be inappropriate or irrational. One patient explains what it feels like to have a psychotic episode. It started when he was on holiday in Russia, and whilst asleep in his hotel room, he got a phone call at about 2 AM from an angry Russian man who shouted at him and asked why he was involved in their business. The phone call panicked him, and he explains what happened when he returned home. From there, fears of persecution and depression gradually built up. About a month after returning from Russia, I was unable to work and my doctor signed me off. I was laying on my bed and I suddenly felt pressure on the top of my head and found myself in total darkness. It was like I had been sucked into my own mind and had lost all sense of reality. I screamed out loud, then suddenly found myself back in my bedroom again with this very strange sensation around my head. I didn't have a clue what was going on, and I decided to move away to try and escape persecution from the KGB. These feelings and thoughts were all caused by schizophrenia, and they became so real to the sufferer that he moved from London to Dorchester to try and escape who he thought was following him. This is a very common way of life for those suffering. For many years, people have thought schizophrenia means a split personality, like a Jekyll and Hyde type character. However, this is a complete myth, and those with schizophrenia can and often do live normal lives. One man in mind is mathematician John Nash, most notable for his invention of the game theory, for which he won a Nobel Peace Prize. He was diagnosed with schizophrenia, yet over time seemed to in fact cure it. It's not entirely sure how, but some believe it could have been caused by John's ability to recognise the voices he heard as just that, and learn to cope with his condition, resulting in it fading somehow, or whether or not his somewhat normalised life, engaging with friends, teaching and studying maths, contributed to his schizophrenia easing. But he and many others provide hope and reassurance for those suffering that there is always a better way. This also reiterates the complexity of the illness, as no one really knows what exactly is happening inside the brain of a patient with the condition, why some people seem to be cured, and what causes it in the first place. What is known is that 3 areas of the brain, 2 areas in the frontal lobe and a small portion of the hippocampus, are different in a patient with schizophrenia and the brain of someone without it. Why this causes a change in thinking, hallucinations and voices is unclear. For this reason, as with all the conditions in this video, this inability to grasp what exactly is happening is the reason it can be so hard to treat. Although, as with cases like John, and many others, schizophrenia can be managed and is no longer the lifelong sentence it was years ago, with the majority of people getting better over time, and not worse. Depression. Depression is a word that we are all familiar with hearing, as it's very much talked about in today's society, but it's actually a very misunderstood illness. It's the most common form of mental condition, and affects around 1 in 10 people. However, the people who have never suffered from it often think it's trivial and not a real condition, but they are wrong. It is a real thing, and it's not something you can just snap out of. For those diagnosed, they can experience a wide variety of symptoms, both physical as well as mental, such as unexplained aches and pains, slow speech and movement, lack of energy and disrupted sleep, to feelings of low mood, anxiety, feeling tearful, and lack of motivation. Many of us may have suffered from these symptoms before, but these sorts of things usually lift after a couple of days, or even hours. But if you are depressed, that low feeling often won't lift, and can last a long time. This can then have the potential to develop into severe depression, which can very much affect one's life. The good news is, unlike some of the other mental illnesses, depression can be cured, despite there not being any definitive explanation for why it happens, and with the correct treatment, some people might only experience 1 episode in their lifetime that will never return. But what causes this such common mental illness? Well, a variety of things can trigger it. It could be a relationship breakup, money worries, illness, or any other stressful or traumatic event in your life. There is no one reason for a person becoming depressed. So if we are starting to understand the causes, what exactly happens inside the brain of a depressed person? Well, it's the result of a chemical imbalance, but it's far more complex than that. It's not just a case that one chemical is too low and one is too high. It's the result of many chemicals working inside and outside of nerve cells, of which there are millions, even billions, that make up the system that is responsible for your mood, perceptions, and how you experience life. Because of this, it means that depression has to be treated according to the individual. So what works for one person may not work for another with the same condition. Nowadays, so much research has gone into this illness that scientists have identified genes that make some individuals more prone to depression than others, and this can influence how they will respond to drug therapy. With this breakthrough, it will be possible in the future to tailor specific drugs to specific individuals. Still not fully understanding it, but hopefully making depression a thing of the past. Insomnia. Insomnia is by far the most common condition on this list. It's thought as many as 1 in 3 suffer from it. But it's not just the occasional night when you can't sleep. It's every night, or when you do, it's only for very short periods. Meaning when you get up in the morning, you have not had enough sleep to feel refreshed and ready for the day. Persistent insomnia can have a massive impact on your quality of life, and can affect your mood and ability to perform normal day-to-day tasks. Although there is no set amount of sleep that a human needs, it's generally thought to be between 7 and 9 hours of good quality sleep for an adult to be able to function properly, although there are always exceptions to this. But what causes insomnia? Well, there are several things that could, including stress, lifestyle and physical problems. However, it's a mystery why if a person is tired and they are let down, why wouldn't it be basic instinct to sleep? Why can some hit the pillow and sleep almost instantly, while others take hours to drop off, or can't stay asleep for any length of time? Well, over the years, there have been many studies on the subject, with suggestions that insomniacs worry so much about not getting enough sleep that this triggers a state of anxiety and over-analysis of themselves and their sleeping environment, which in turn only adds to their sleeplessness. In more recent studies, it shows that people with insomnia have more high-frequency electrical activity in their brain compared to normal sleepers, suggesting insomniacs have enhanced sensory, making them more sensitive and aware of what is going on around them. In effect, their brains could be too alert to switch off. If this is true, then it comes as no surprise that many well-known successful people are insomniacs, especially those who are thought to be perfectionists or are highly scrutinized by the public. But the truth is, no one really knows what causes insomnia, and what is going on inside the brain to make a person not sleep despite being tired. Although it is a big problem to a lot of people, and costs billions of dollars each year with lost days at work and low productivity, so finding a cure would have a positive impact on everyone. Dissociative identity disorder, previously known as multi-personality disorder. This condition is often confused with schizophrenia, however the two are very different. Dissociative identity disorder is a complex psychological condition, usually caused by severe trauma during early childhood. The condition means the sufferer has an altered sense of reality. They feel their body and the environment they live in is unreal, and they do not know who they are and can take on many different identities. It is oftentimes a form of denial of what has happened in the past. The illness can affect people at any time of their life, and it's extremely distressing for them and the people around them. The sufferer literally dissociates their conscious self from a situation or experience. Some people find it hard to believe that the disorder exists, as unless you are a sufferer, it's hard to understand how a person can have multiple personalities. But the disorder means the patient has 2 or more separate identities, which control the person's behaviour and memory, often wiping chunks of their life from their conscious minds. The different identities will have their own age, gender and race, each with a different way of thinking, a different voice, and different gestures. If the sufferer is under hypnosis, the different identities can sometimes be separated and act on specific requests. The condition is terrifying and can result in headaches, time loss, amnesia, and out-of-body experiences. The person may find that they are doing things they would not normally do, such as stealing, driving erratically, or being violent, claiming that they had no choice and that they are compelled to do these things by one of their alternative identities, which is in fact in their mind true. As you can tell, this is an incredibly complex illness, and as many as 100 alternative personalities, in the case of Kim Noble, can emerge, all serving different roles that help the sufferer cope with or forget trauma. Unfortunately, accurate diagnosis of the disorder often takes many years, but in 99% of the cases, the person has been abused or had frightening, unpredictable childhoods, typically before the age of 9. But some psychiatrists throw even more mystery on this condition, and say that it does not actually exist, as they cannot understand why people who have had terrible childhoods can grow up without the condition, yet others will develop it, and why some are diagnosed without having traumatic childhoods. As far as treatment goes for this very bizarre and mysterious illness, there is no cure, although long-term treatment has been shown to be very successful. So, that's 5 of some of the most common mental health problems we know of, all of which are in fact mysterious in nature and often in origin. Now before I go, I want to let you know that the Top 5's Thriller magazine is going to be released next week, and last week's video I told of an awesome plan for the first 100 people who subscribe to the magazine, who will be able to vote on what subjects they want researched and possibly narrated by me in the magazine, for in-app listening and reading. While I wanted to give you a little more information on this, we had a huge response from people subscribing to the magazine mailing list who are interested, and those who did will now be kept up to date on the magazine launch before I announce it on this channel. That way, they and you can get a much better chance of being the first 100 subscribers of the free 30-day trial of the monthly magazine, which by the way is no way binding, and you can leave at any moment. But those first 100 will get the chance to vote on a topic they have always wanted to learn more about and see investigated. That's it. Instructions to join the Thriller magazine inner circle, and all the information will be on the first page of the first issue. And if you want a chance of being the first 100 to the 30-day free trial of the magazine, or just want to know a little bit more about it, then click on the link in the description. That way, you'll be the first to know about its release. Thanks for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and remember, if you feel you are suffering from any kind of illness, you never need to be alone, as there are lots of options for everyone. We are incredibly lucky to live in a world where help is just an email or phone call away. Thanks for watching, and as always, I'll see you in the next video.